Are we live?
We're live.
It's just not, for some reason, when I don't hit the button, it's not telling me we're live. Oh, there it is.
Right.
9 seconds in. We are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Researchers Reports. I'm Kerry Arnold. With me, as always, producer and co-host of the report, the lovely Miss Daniela Ayolo. How are you, dear?
I'm good, thank you.
And everybody was worried about Dad. I mentioned it the other night on a late show, and
I did. And lots of people got in touch, and thank you for that. I've just been so busy because other stuff's been going on that I've not had a chance to reply, but I do appreciate everyone's thoughts and your messages.
Well, he's doing okay now, though, right?
Doing okay, but we still need to,
Sure.
Sort some things out, but so far, so good.
I knew there was people were concerned, and so we'll just go ahead and get that out, make sure everybody knows what's going on there, because they are concerned about you. We always say we have a great show planned for you tonight. This time, we really mean it. Kidding. We always mean it, but we have a great guest tonight coming to us all the way from Dallas, Texas, researcher, Mr. Rick Taylor. How are you, sir?
I am doing fine, Kerry.
It is great to have you here. When we talked on the phone the other night, I was like, man, we got to get this guy on the show. I asked Daniela, I think I might have asked you. I don't know. You were busy. That's what it was. I just texted her. I was like, I got a, Rick Taylor Wednesday. And she was like, okay, cool. So we're gonna get into your experiences there. Let a few more people pour in here. Give them a little bit of time. Let everybody know that today is the last day to enter for the giveaway. These night vision binoculars, a $550 value. They record. I put them on this tripod, by the way. You can't have my tripod. That's for Bigfoot Odyssey filming. The radios will be a second prize we're giving away, a $220 value there. They work up to 36 miles and they come with earpieces. So you can be like James Bond and Q or whatever. This infrared torch flashlight shoots a spot up to 150 feet. That goes with the infrared night vision goggles, binoculars. What else? I don't have them, but one person's going to get 2 of the Black Web 20,100 milliamp hour battery banks. And then the 4th, we're going to give away a Bigfoot Odyssey t-shirt. And to enter is $10. Every $10 is an entry. I think we have 88 entries right now. Every $10 is an entry, and that puts you in to one entry gets you into all 4 drawings. So you got 4 chances to win one of those prizes. We're drawing for that. So we're going to have a special live show just for the drawing Friday at 8 o'clock Central. And that's it. But tonight at midnight Central is going to be the cutoff. Tomorrow we'll get everything in order. Everybody's going to get assigned a number that's in there. For each one of your entries, we'll get a number, and we'll do the drawing right here. So be here for that Friday. See if you won. You don't have to be here to win. Just entered. And make sure you use the PayPal, because if you do that, I can send your money back to you. So on here is fine, but it's just harder for me to send your money back to you from here. So, all right. That's it. So let's get into this. Rick. This is the stuff you were telling me the other night. I was just so enthralled in listening to you. I didn't have a lot of time. Messing with the puppy here, but what got you into the subject before you ever knew anything about Bigfoot? Did you believe in it growing up? What happened?
Well, back in '67, when the Patterson-Gimlin film first came out, I was a young adolescent. I remember the hair standing up on the back of my neck when the video first hit the news sources for the first time. And at the time, Kerry and Daniela, it looked very real to me. I mean, even back then, going through the sand and the apparent size of it and the fluid way that it moved, I mean, it looked real and scared the daylights out of me. For a time, I grew up on the West Coast, moved to Texas after college, and have obviously picked up the accent. But I was I hunted, fished, camped all up and down the Sierra Nevadas on the West Coast. Been to into the Cascades, Montana, a lot of areas, Washington, Oregon, where you would call, prime Bigfoot country. And I never saw or heard anything that would make me believe they existed, and probably held to the same, belief as if they were out there, I would have seen them,
Right.
like a lot of people do. So
Sure.
moved to Texas, spent a first career south of here in Houston. I was a firefighter, paramedic, and arson investigator for the Houston Fire Department. Got all three areas of public safety. Retired there after 20-something years. And for the last 20 after that, I've been a private investigator certified in fire and explosion investigations, and done a lot of work for major insurance concerns. And it was in about 2003. We'd been up here in the Dallas area for a couple of years. And my son and I, there was a heavily wooded, kind of a remote creek, surrounded by subdivisions. I'm not saying that far away, maybe half a mile, less than a mile away from where we were. But we were out there night fishing. I had parked my pickup up next to the creek, put a Coleman lantern on the tailgate, put out folding chairs, and my son and I, would fish all night sometimes. And where we were parked was there was a side slough that ran perpendicular into the creek, and we were right on that point. So there was water on two sides of us. We could fish off to the right in the side slough or out in the creek. We had stink bait on the bottom for catfish, minnows under a cork, throwing lures, just everything, throwing a smorgasbord out there. And we had a few bites, caught a few throwbacks, just enough action to keep two hardcore fishermen interested. By no means, anything to write home about, but we're having good father and son time. And we'd been out there, we got out there about 8 o'clock, early spring, already dark. It was after midnight. I'm going to say somewhere around 1, 2 o'clock. I'm in the folding chair and I start noticing movement to the north of us, maybe a crackle of leaves, a brush of bush or something, but it was pretty far away. Obviously something moving or foraging in the night. And I wasn't a bit concerned. You have foxes, coyotes, armadillos, different night animals that forage, and most of them are not going to be of any concern. But I was aware the noises were getting closer, and that side slough was about 20 feet wide. So anything making its way to us would have had to have crossed water. So I was even more, at ease, but aware. I'm always aware. I mean, my career in public safety has taught me bad things do happen to good people, and I always, in the back of my mind, make sure that I'm not vulnerable. I legally had a little 380 automatic in my shirt pocket, had a 357 Magnum in the truck. So I mean, if any serious things happened, I could, I had the means to defend myself. And at some point, Kerry and Daniela, I started getting the feeling of being watched. Not uncomfortable, but aware something's watching me. Someone or something's watching me. Very, very distinct. I started, becoming more aware of the pickup, the parking area, everywhere around me, not paranoid, but just, aware. And then I heard the distinct snap of a branch being broke. And it's different if you're holding a branch up in the air and you break it. But if it's on the ground and you step on it and it snaps, its acoustics are different. And I heard that across that side slough, a branch being stepped on snap under weight. and partially muffled. Well, that got my level of alertness up a couple notches. So I'm glancing over there. I casually put my pole down, not to concern my son. I think he was 15 years old then, and got over to the truck, grabbed me a Q-beam spotlight, and I just started spotting across that side slough into. It was pretty thick brush. I would put it about 100 feet away from us, pretty thick, and I didn't see a lot on kind of my first pass up and down it, but on one of my subsequent passes, not sticking out of the brush, but a Q-beam will penetrate through the gaps in the leaves and the branches. Recessed back, a facial shape was partially illuminated as I brushed by, and it took me a second to react to it. And by that time I had passed that point. I flipped the light back real quick to the spot I thought I saw it and couldn't locate anything. And my son saw me kind of do the jump, a little kind of, not a startle jump, but I, just snapped real quick. And he looked over, he goes, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I didn't want to say, "Oh man, I think there's somebody," I didn't want to get him upset or scared. I was thinking in my mind, what did I just see? And I didn't see it. I turned the light off. I minimized it. And I said, I don't know, son. I'm just looking. And I put the light back up. I got back in the folding chair. We were about 2 feet off of this sharp drop into the creek. And the creek water was probably another foot below the level of that drop off. I'm not going to say over 10 minutes, probably not less than 5. I heard a faint brush. So obviously I turned back to the side slough, and I can see an object. I had a Coleman lantern on my tailgate. It didn't light up far at all. It basically, you could barely see things, but I noticed an object arcing out of that brush towards us. I'm thinking, wow, is a big bird flying out of the brush or what? But it angled down past about 5 feet in front of us and hit the water, about making a splash, about like a 50-pound child doing a cannonball off the high dive. It wasn't a little grapefruit or a softball. It was a big kerspoosh, just throwing water up. And of course I'm falling back in the chair, and my son's already dropped the pole. He bolts over to me and hugs up against me screaming, "What was that? What was that?" And I'm pulling him back away from the edge, and I'm watching these pretty fair-sized waves fanning out from where it hit. It wasn't a beaver popping its tail. I've done top water a lot. It didn't come up out of the water, and I saw the object come in and hit. Something about cinder block size was just thrown at us and scared the crap out of both of us, And after I get him pulled away, I bolt to the pickup, forget the 380. I get my 357 out of the truck, and I start yelling over there in the brush line. I said, "That's not funny. You could hurt somebody throwing stuff like that. If you throw something again, I've got a gun. I just may shoot back. If it had hit us, it had seriously injured us."
Right.
It was not a small object. It had a lot of mass to it. Well, I was torqued to the max. We were out there in open public land, minding our own business, not bothering anybody. And in my mind, somebody was seriously threatening us, and I didn't appreciate it one bit. So I eased up as close as I could to the water line, listening and watching for anything to come my direction. I didn't want to get hit. But I cocked that 66 back single action, and I aimed it straight down into the mud in front of me, and I turned my head and plugged the closest ear to it. And I don't know if you fired a 357 without ear protection, but it'll make your ears ring,
Sure.
And I fired a round off straight down into the mud. Boom. Immediately after that, and I'm sure, Kerry, you're a hunter, you know what a big buck deer would sound like jumping and bolting in thick brush. Okay. It wasn't navigating easily, but something on the other side of that slough began plowing through that thick underbrush at a high rate of speed, busting limbs, and just sounded like a baby bulldozer taking off, from us at a high sprint speed. And I mean, it was just plowing through that stuff. And my son and I stood there with our jaws open, totally overwhelmed, and it faded off. I mean, it cleared the area in short order. And when it died down and got quiet, we turned to each other and he goes, "Dad, what was that?" And I said, "I don't know, son, but let's go." So
No doubt.
That was my, I went out there the next day and looked at distances and made measurements. And I realized, folks, that whatever threw that was not anybody or any human or any triathlon or, Olympic athlete that could have thrown something that far. I mean, it covered at the bare minimum of 100 feet, possibly further. And I dabbled, I pondered that in my mind. I told the story to a few people. And, you get the typical, nod and shrug of the shoulders. I mean, a bear doesn't have hands. A bear doesn't toss stuff like that. Yeah, it can break limbs and, rip and knock stuff, but not arc it out. I mean, not put it up in the air accurately. No. Mountain lion, nothing I knew of as far as existing animals, nor any human. I mean, I came to that deduction fairly quick. Kind of faded away for several years. And then surfing the web one night, I came across a thread that said fishermen attacked at night. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. It sounded a little familiar. So I double clicked on it. It took me to the BFRO website, Bigfoot Field Researchers website. And I read the story, and it was so close. There were 3 fishermen in that case, and they had multiple, I won't call them boulders, but pretty good sized rocks thrown at them. And I mean, it overwhelmed me. Well, I reluctantly filled out the little sighting information they have on there. And lo and behold, I didn't think it would go anywhere. I got a call back from an active investigator with the BFRO, interested in what had occurred to me. And during that phone conversation, he related that he was aware of other fishermen complaining about activity up and down that waterway, which really, for me, I wasn't sure what it was, but I heard dispatch and public safety noise in the background, and I just point blank asked him, I said, "Are you in some kind of," he said, "Yeah, I'm taking a break at work." He was in law enforcement, in near the dispatch center, which added credibility to me that, who I was talking to was not a loose cannon, was a man of reputable, background. And he taught me a lot. We went out, we did some research on that waterway. We were followed, we were paralleled, had stuff thrown at us, and I eventually had my first visual sighting there, folks. Not real great. It was at 150 yards with binoculars. It was very quick and fleeting, but it got my undivided attention. And at that point, I dedicated to researching for answers personally, and then sharing it, with other folks. I realized these things exist. They live out there. They're very good at avoiding people. And the longer I researched, the bigger the box got. There have been so many unexpected twists and turns. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the explanations for how they do some of the things they do, but they're very extraordinary subjects at the very least. I went back to my roots. My grandmother was full-blood Cherokee Indian. My mother was mixed blood. I began to go back to the native resources and studying them. And I, like many people, thought at first they were just a undiscovered dumb primate or base primate, maybe not dumb. But as I had repeated experiences with them, I realized these subjects possess reasoning, cognitive thinking, and are very intuitive about intentions and what people have. A lot of gear, stuff you put up to your face, camera traps, guns, rifles, they see that and they're backing out. They're not like the little organ grinding monkey where you can, beat on a tree and make a few whoops and they come stumbling out there, in full view. That's not going to happen. If I'm stepping on toes, I'm sorry, but my success has been respect, okay, for them. Doesn't mean I worship them or anything, but it's their habitat, and I try to respect that. And I've had no problems. I've never been threatened. I've had a family group of 5 get, 3 of them got within 15 feet of me, and they look like something out of a Steven Spielberg movie. I mean, just really human, but not human. And I've written a book on it. It's Bigfoot, my experiences with, them. And it's America's, in my opinion, it's America's last free tribe. They're a tribal group, and I've had a blast with it, Kerry.
Well, but before Daniela gets into some of your other experiences, I just want to say, and it's pretty rare, I think, for someone to have that level of awareness, because you can imagine how many people have been in the same situation as you, fishing at night, whatever, and have something like that going around them. Maybe not something like splash in the water, but to know that there's something there around, and then to carry on and investigate later. So, you had to be at least suspicious, I think, that there was something else there that you just weren't aware, that you didn't know, like an animal that you didn't know of.
Just let me interject. There's a whole lot going on in our world we may never understand fully. Sure. Forces. Just to share a little bit in my, being as old as I am, in my teenage years, mid to late teenage years, I made some pretty poor choices. Okay, probably headed for the prison, headed for prison or the grave, and there are a lot of subplots with drugs and heavy partying and stuff. And a lot of times people gravitate towards the darker side of that stuff. And trust me, like I said, I was headed for prison or the grave, and light was shed into my life by the Creator. And basically, I'm not talking about a church or a religious group or anything. I'm talking about the Creator of this world divinely opened my eyes and basically said, Rick, you better turn or you're going to burn. I needed to make a heart level change at what I was doing. So I had battles with, you want to call it another dimension, another paradigm, whatever you want to put on there. But there are entities that are exist that are not for your well-being or good. They're there to take you out or down. And I think, Kerry, and Daniela, me understanding some of those parameters early helped me to digest and navigate this Bigfoot phenomenon with a clearer picture in mind. I personally don't think they themselves are inherently evil, but I do feel there are forces that either influence or control them in different instances. and especially your guest a couple weeks ago. You know, my heart goes out to the man. But
Mark
I
Barton.
don't have any fear. You know, Mark Barton. I'm not going to go out there and pick a fight or anything. But I have the seal of the Creator Spirit in my life, and as long as I keep my heart right, folks, I got nothing to worry about. I got nothing to worry about. That doesn't mean I didn't inadvertently step over a copperhead. Fortunately, I didn't get bit. You know, but there's things out there, and you need to be careful. You know, anybody that thinks they can go out in the wilderness and it's Disneyland, you're sadly mistaken. What killed the settlers 150 and 200 years ago will kill you if you're not careful, you know? So, but as far as my experience with the Bigfoot, I've never been threatened by them. They've even gone out of their way. I was up in Kentucky on an expedition with a group, and we had gotten there, did a little bit of stuff, but basically hit the sack early the first night. And the man that had come up there, and matter of fact, he's about 50 miles from here. We coincidentally, you know, both signed up for the same expedition. And that night I'm sleeping. He said, "Look, Rick, don't sleep in your camper shell, you know, and stuff." I had a camper shell on the back of my truck. He said, "Man, pick the living room," and he had a big travel trailer. He said, "Man, take the sofa in the living room. It folds out into a sleeper." I didn't fold it out, but I put my sleeping bag and pillow on it and slept like a baby. Well, about 3 a.m, Kerry, and it was 3 or 4 a.m. I wake up and I'm thinking, what just woke me up? I mean, I was in a sound sleep and then I was wide awake, and I'm going, I check I have to use a CPAP. I have sleep apnea. So I'm checking in. It was working fine. Nothing's wrong. And I lay back down in the sofa, and just before I nod out to sleep, and I'm not talking on the door or a far wall, it's right beside my head, how whatever it was knew exactly where my head was, and it wasn't loud, but it was a very firm tap, tap, tap on the wall. I could hear it distinctly. And then, of course, I got the feeling, and I spoke out. I said, "Look, I'm very tired. I would like to sleep. Would you please leave me alone?" Well, Kerry, nothing else happened. I mean, I went back to sleep, woke up in the morning, and the guy there is pretty new at this, learning. And I said, "Hey, you didn't hear me talking last night, did you?" He said, "No, man, I slept like a rock." Well, that day we cooked about 30 hamburger patties, for maybe even 40 or 50 for the group. 2 or 3 of those patties fell down in the coals outside. It was a bricked outside fixed grilling, barbecue pit. And so we left them there. Well, that night we went out on the expedition. I had some great stuff happen there, got some good thermal. But anyway, we come back to the trailer there, and I'm downloading some of my audio and video files. And he had a good shower there, but man, this campsite had, like 6 private rooms. It was just like 50 feet away. You go in, you lock the door, you've got your shower, your toilet, a bench. I mean, it's great, and a lot of room. So he went across the street to get a shower. He said, "Hey, I'm gonna go grab a shower." I said, "Okay." Well, I felt the first 2 steps going down his travel trailer, but he hit that last step, and man, the whole trailer shook, and then the door yanked open, and he dove in with eyes as big as plates, screaming, "Something big just," he said, "something big just ran away out there." I never looked up. I was just looking on my computer, and then I finally glanced over at him and I said, "I told you so." One of the big guys were down, picking those burnt hamburger patties, and it was about 10 feet away from the door, and they weren't expecting anybody to come out. And he came out the door, and it jumped up and ran off through the trees and leaves and scared the daylights out of the guy. But, I've had stuff like that happen, it's just, go ahead.
What's your feeling towards it being a possible cover-up? Do you have any thoughts on why this isn't not being disclosed, if it is a cover-up?
Well,
I've got another question. Go on. Sorry, I'll let you answer, but I've got a follow-up
The-
question to go with it. So I'll just see how you feel.
So let me make sure, because you broke up a little bit. Are you saying government cover up on
Yeah.
the Bigfoot?
Yeah. For example, do you think it's
Well,
something like that?
I've personally spoken with a couple of different government people that associated with the government that are quite aware they exist, and one was a ex-veteran. Where one was taken in eastern part of the United States. What had happened was that he was a Middle East veteran coming back. It was about 2005, so it was a Desert Storm and some of the subsequent stuff, or Desert Shield, whatever happened, right around the turn of the century. But anyway. He was riding out his last several months there at a particular base. I won't get specific, but it was in the eastern United States, and it was during a live fire exercise where I think they were firing at the 200-yard range, and the range master at some point saw somebody running across the range at about the 500 mark and yelled out, "Cease fire!" Stopped all of the firing, and then they inquired as who was out there, and it was one of the remote ranges that took the better part of an hour to get out there with a deuce and a half. So it wasn't like somebody just strolling away, from any of the barracks, and he got the notice of it. That's what started the whole wheels rolling. He was there. Platoon sergeant come up and told him that the CO wanted to talk to him. Well, his first thought was, what did I do wrong? And he was trying to get another stripe before he left, and trying to do everything he could. And he was one of the Gulf War vets, I guess, there to kind of help some of the newer guys along. And he went to his CO, and the man there said, with his combat experience, he's been selected for a special detail. And he gave him, his orders and said, you're supposed to report to Captain so-and-so or Lieutenant. Can't remember if it was Captain or Lieutenant, on such and such a date. This is top secret. You don't discuss it with your peers. If you do, we'll bust you. You keep it under hat. Well, on such and such a day, they assembled. They went out to that remote range into one of the support buildings, and for 2 days they were lectured by Bureau of Land Management agents and National Wildlife. There were 2 different federal agencies there, and through the course of the training or lecturing, they started joking among themselves. They had a whole platoon of them there. Had the platoon sergeant, platoon, a medic, basically a whole self-contained unit, and had a couple of days of briefing. And then on a certain night, they went out there. But this time when they assembled out there, it was fully locked and loaded, night vision. They were geared out the same way they would have been on making a night expedition or foray into a hot zone, and these guys didn't really understand what was going on. Their mission was to form a protective perimeter around these agents, and when the agents moved, they moved. They had point men up front, people in the rear, just basically surround the agents and secure the area. And for the first 2 nights, he said it was kind of boring, They did find some interesting berry bushes that had been matted and pressed down, where obviously something had been staying in there. These agents had gloves and Ziploc bags, and they were gathering stuff, and they didn't really care. It was just odd that they were out there. Well, the 3rd night that they were out doing this expedition, at some point after 2, and it was rainy, They were wearing ponchos. It was kind of miserable to be out there, wet, damp, and miserable. Somewhere around 1 or 2 in the morning, as they were on the move going from one location to the other, all of a sudden there was yelling, cussing, and about 12 rapid shots from the front of their group there. Of course, everybody dropped to a knee, spun, panned and scanned, wondering what was going on. And then all kind of went quiet. They could hear talking up front, and then they hear yelling for medic. And the medic and the platoon sergeant were back there by him. So the platoon sergeant and the medic went running up there. They could hear more fussing, cussing, and, kind of a commotion and talking and everything. Well, he sat back there about 15 or 20 minutes with some of the other guys saying, man, what is going on? And the other guy, I don't know, Finally, the platoon sergeant comes back mumbling to himself, and he says, what's going on, Sarge? He said, man, I don't know. You go look. So he goes up there, and sure enough, there's this about 8-foot hairy body, face planted, in the mud. And he remembers still kind of steaming, body heat coming off of it. And he asked one of the guys that's very shaken. He said, what happened? He said, man, I don't know. He said, it appeared in my night vision right on top of me, charging towards us. And those guys being, seasoned combat veterans, 2 or 3 of them drew a bead and they unloaded on it. I mean, they dropped it right there. He went back, or somebody went back and got a body bag from somewhere, brought it back out there, and didn't fit in it. They had it crumpled and twisted, but when they rolled it over, several of them gasped. It was obviously female and very human-like. I mean, freaked the guys out. They thought maybe a gorilla when they looked at its back, but when it rolled over, he said it was very human-like. And they crumpled it as best they could, half dragged and carried it back to the support buildings. Well, when they got there was a spit-polished white and silver reefer rig, no ICC markings, basically barefoot and plain, parked there with the reefer running. And on the direction of the agents, they pulled it up a ramp and got it into that freezer rig, and closed it up. And then they were all ordered to go to the the support building and debrief. And he was passing a group of those agents, and his curiosity got the best of him. He said, hey fellas, what was that? And they all kind of stopped and chuckled. They said it is an illusory hominid. That was the term they used. They said an illusory hominid, and they were much more common, but they're not quite so common now. And he went on inside the building to debrief. When he came out, the reefer rig, the agents, and everybody was gone. And he distinctly remembers hearing one of them saying, well, Fred, do you think this sums it up, or this finishes it, or whatever? But, if he's lying to me and it's well orchestrated, I've heard a couple other stories similar to that. I don't know. I just hope I don't ever see government agents or black SUVs.
Right.
I don't want to get into any controversy. This is fun for me. I'm not going to stir up something that I that's just my end of it. But I've heard that. I've heard those stories. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
a bit of feedback there, isn't there? That's kind of where I was going. People are going out looking for Bigfoot out in the woods and places. It would be interesting if someone like yourself is a private investigator and has access maybe to, I don't know, files, whatever, contacts, that we start investigating into the other side, into the paperwork side, the government side, if it was that. We focus all in one place, but there could be another side to it that we could start investigating. I don't know.
When it comes to government cover-ups and agencies, this is my opinion. There are a lot of groups that would love to harvest a specimen, be the first. Sad fact is, you even read stories, they've been killed and they'll probably continue to be, killed at certain instances. I don't know about the bear hunter out in California. His story's changed a lot. I'm not saying true or untrue. Don't know enough to judge there, but I have read and talked with enough people. I firmly believe that they have been, killed. If a group was to, this is just in my opinion, were able to bring one down, my thought is there would be government agencies that would come out of the woodwork, and most of those guys that think they would prevail would reach a point where they'd have to make a choice, either face prison time or back off. And I think most Joe Q citizens, at least I would, no, prison time's not a place I'd want to spend, and proving something about Bigfoot's not worth it. I'd shut it down and leave it alone. But fortunately, I haven't had that happen to me yet. So anyway.
What do you feel about mind speak?
I've experienced it. I don't talk about this a lot because you mention it to some people and they roll their eyes.
Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey.
But when I was in Oklahoma, a Native American drum making workshop, and up till that point, I thought they were an undiscovered, primate in North America. I hadn't really delved into the Native American side, and I spent the better part of 2 or 3 days lurking around it with a night vision. I told the host I wasn't interested in making drums, but she was Native American, mixed blood, and had a very close relationship with what she called the forest people. And it sounded pretty incredible to me at the time. And I was out there. I'd spent a couple nights very frustrated, had a few noises, felt like I was being led around, like a chicken, with its head cut off almost. I got frustrated. I'm at the end of this logging road, sitting on the tailgate of my pickup, very frustrated. It's after dark, and I get the feeling that I'm kind of being watched. And if somebody had walked up, they'd have said, man, this guy's crazy. But I just yelled, not yelled out, but loudly spoke out. I said, look, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not. I said, I just want to get a good look up close. I just want to see you. I don't want to see 150, yard, subject hiding in the bush, with binoculars. I want to see you up close, face to face. And soon after I basically vented to the forest, one of the guys there, Choctaw, got Choctaw bloodline in him. He was coming down the road, and of course, he was in law enforcement, and I had a walkie-talkie, and he did too. He said, Rick, I'm coming down the road. And I didn't tell anybody, but yeah, I had a 45, tucked away with extra clips on me. I had some other stuff in my truck. I wasn't going to bring it out, but nobody at the gathering knew I was armed, But that next night, after that, well, the guy came down the trail and told me, he said, man, something big was moving off to your right. You were being watched. I said, well, I had that feeling. Okay, fast forward. Next night, last night of the workshop, I'm there around a fireside service, a lot of Native American customs and ceremonies. And I kind of eased out early before all of the material was covered. And I'd made it a point. There was about 40 acres of clear cut. And around that 40 acres of clear cut was thick Oklahoma woods, very, very overgrown, a lot of bush and underbrush, not easy to navigate, but surrounded by this. I would go off into that underbrush very methodically, one direction. Once I got in the brush, I would pan, scan with at that time I had a Gen 1 night vision to see if I was being followed. And then once I got out of sight, I would move in increments and stop and watch to make sure if somebody was going to try to follow me, they were going to have to keep me in sight, which in turn would make them visible. I didn't want to be pranked with. I took great precautions, and I would wind up on the other side of that clear cut to where I would stay. And that's exactly what I did that night. I was watching a tree line where I thought, if these things are interested in the drum, making, or the drum sounds and the chanting and songs, and they want to come out and take a look, I'll watch them from, a hidden vantage point if they break cover to, get a better look. And that's exactly what I was doing. And I was watching that tree line, and lo and behold, something started coming out of the tree line, and I got all excited till I scoped in on it and realized it was the landowner. How she got over there without me seeing her, probably when I was doing my navigating through the thick brush, but I'm all hunkered down, and instead of headed towards the group, out in the middle of that clear cut, she's coming down the tree line to my location. And I thought, wow, that's coincidental. She doesn't know I'm here. And she kept getting closer and closer and closer, and finally walked right up to me, went around the bush and stopped right in front of me. Well, I stood up, called her by name, and I said, how did you know I was here? I mean, it wasn't pitch, it was 2/3 moon, but I was in the dark. And she just kind of smiled, and they said, they told me you were here. Well, again, my skeptical mind at the time, I thought, yeah, right. I was still a skeptic, and a little cautious, and the next thing she said, folks, I would put it on the same chances of getting hit by a meteorite or a comet. It could happen, but is it likely? No. I made that statement the night before out where nobody else heard it. I was reasonably certain nobody was out there. Nobody followed me. And the only person that knew I was there was the guy that walked up later, with the walkie-talkie. And this landowner said, do you want to go see them? Okay. I make the statement the night before, I want to see you, with nobody there to hear it. And then the next night, this lady finds me in a hidden part of the brush, tells me they told her I was there. And the next thing she said was, do you want to go see them? Well, folks, I mean, my mind kind of like blew up there for a second. I mean, it was a slap, upside of the head. I mean, that was hard for me to digest. I was pessimistic about, yeah, right, they told you. But then the next words were, so I said, yeah, I'd love to go see them. So we went back to the fireside, told people I was going to her special visiting place. She had a place where she met with them. And I followed her to the north side of that clear cut, stopped at the big cattle gate that surrounded that meadow area. She started calling names, different names for these subjects. And I thought it was at the time, pessimistically, I thought it was a little bit of a showy, trying to convince me of something. And when I started hearing those heavy movements and footfalls coming up out of that creek bed about 100, 200 yards away, it sounded very real, okay? And it started from a due east direction, more than one set of, more than one bipedal. It sounded like several. And then I began to hear more movement to our northeast and our southeast. And I'm looking through the gaps, looking for flashlight, some type of light source. I'm not seeing anything. And I can tell you, at night in the Oklahoma woods, just crashing and going through a lot of that brush without a light source, I had a night vision and I was very methodical. But if somebody was pranking with me, they were doing a pretty good job because they sounded pretty big. That's all I can tell you. And those subjects got to within about 10 feet of the break in that foliage, and they stopped. At that point, I'm very nervous. They sound very real, and I don't do vulnerable very well. And I felt pretty vulnerable right now. There's some big stuff in that brush. I don't have any idea exactly what it is. And she's just sitting there, and I asked her. She had told me they don't like flashlights or anything you put up to your head. So I put my night vision up. I looked over at her and I said, can I try my night vision? Now, I don't know what kind of bond she had with him. She just smiled and said, yeah, go ahead. So I turned the thing on. It was a new scope and it wouldn't come on, folks. It wouldn't work. I adjusted the connections, the battery and everything, tried it a couple of times and it wouldn't work. And I'm thinking in my mind, what's going on here? You know, if somebody's pranking with me, there is no way scientifically I know that they could affect my night vision like this. That really got me a little, you know, off balance a little. And then I told her, I looked at her, I said, well, it doesn't work. She then smiled at me and she says, try it now. I tried to on off and it came up right on and fired right up. My first thought was, man, is this woman a witch or what? You know, I mean, because she got some power I don't know about, but that freaked me out. Well, you know, night vision doesn't penetrate brush. It's not an X-ray, you know, machine. I couldn't see anything, you know, even with the IR illuminator. They were too far back in and I turned it off. I said, well, I can't see anything in anyway. At that point, she says, do you want to go in and see them? Folks, I was very, very apprehensive. I was nervous. I was bewildered. I wasn't in my comfort zone. If she would have been a man, I would have told her right then, I'm okay. I'm good. That's all right. But I hate saying it, but my testosterone pride wouldn't let me wimp out in front of a woman. I'm not, and that's no shame or belittle on women. It's just, you know, male pride. I could not, you know, I couldn't wimp out and say no. I said a weak yes. And we opened the gate. She went about 100 yards down back the direction towards the group. We were still, you know, a couple hundred yards away. And there was a break in the trail there. She made a left into. Well, when we were in the meadow area with that 2/3 moon, I could see her pretty well. But when we got up under that thick canopy, it went almost pitch black. I couldn't hardly see anything. And I stayed right on her 6 o'clock. I didn't want to lose sight of her. You know, she was their friend. And I'm following her at very close distance. And I'm hearing things moving in the brush on both sides of me. And it all sounds big and big stirring. And I did not have I never looked to my right or left. And some of it sounded very close. I did have a little RCA small wonder camcorder that I had in my hand that I was fidgeting with. And at the time I didn't realize I was hitting the photo button. And I don't know if I sent it to you, Kerry, or not, but that enhanced and unenhanced pictures, I know it's in my book.
I think so.
I should have sent that to you. I don't know. I didn't know.
Just a reminder right quick. We only got about 7 minutes left in the show, Rick. So
well,
I know you like to give a lot of details, and we're definitely going to have you back on. We were going to take some questions from the chat, but if we have time, we'll take those. But that's okay. Well, go ahead, finish up.
In that episode, we stopped, and a voice. When we got to our meeting place, a voice just as clear as I'm talking to you. It wasn't audible. It wasn't an audible sound, but just as clear in my head, the question came. It said, why are you carrying a gun? And at that point, I'm thinking, Rick, you're losing it, man. Now you're hearing voices in your head. You know, you're really losing it. And I doubted what was going on. And it was almost like, it was pronounced 10 times clearer and more forceful. It was repeated. Why are you carrying a gun? And when it went through my head the second time, I didn't doubt it. I looked over at her. Well, before that, it may be a primal ability we had, folks, when we were more tribal, but I knew how to answer them in my head. It wasn't audible. I said, it's a tool of protection that I've carried around my close friends and family. I've used it on my job as a tool. I've never hurt anybody with it, although I could have used deadly force 2 different times when I was in law enforcement, chose not to. And, thank God it came out all right. But I said, I've never hurt them with it, and I will not hurt you now. And then in my head, they called the host by name, and they said, step away from her. I looked over at her. I said, they're telling me to move away from you. She wasn't shocked. She just smiled and said, do what do what they tell you to do. I left her, got back to the main trail, and that's when 5 of them came out of the brush and met me. And I'm abbreviating it. It's in my book. I've got pictures that I took of the one on the side. I've got pictures of a big one up in the tree. I've got videos and picture clips from my videos. All you got to do is Google Richard Taylor Bigfoot, and it'll bring you to my book links. But my whole Kerry and Daniela, my whole book, my whole experience there, these things, they were a family group, and they trusted me enough to let their young get within 15 feet of me. At that point, as a parent, I realized they were extending a show of trust to me, and my whole paradigm shifted on that and my beliefs. These things are tribal, and that's when I began to embrace some of my native roots and stories. The Cherokee have a term, and it comes down through the elders. Larry Shade, storyteller, relates it on YouTube. They're called the Untitled, and basically loosely translated forest beings of the lost tribe. And the Cherokee used to put out offerings of edible roots and berries around their villages, and in turn, the big guys offered them protection. I was up in Cherokee territory, and we can talk about this the next time. I've seen it work. I've seen it work today, Kerry, where they're living, they don't mess with people or their livestock, and it's a pretty live and let live situation. I don't have any personal scary stories.
Well, there's a lot of things that we'd still like to get into with you.
Okay.
A lot of questions I'm sure we could get from the chat. Let's try to take one or two while we got a few minutes. What do you think?
All right.
Let me just go back up.
Okay.
Strange Land. Do you think there are smaller sizes species of Sasquatch or others that exist?
Do you
Sorry.
think? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think okay, first of all, I believe they're a hybrid human, okay? And just as we are different, I think you're going to find the same variation. You could take a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader and stand her next to a homeless man. They're not going to look a whole lot alike, but they're both human, and if these things are, and I believe they are, as human-like as they are, you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly out there, just like there's areas of our cities where you're totally safe, and there's other areas you don't want to be caught there at night at all. I feel it's the same way out there, folks. There are areas and dangerous rogues you want nothing to do with. Fortunately, I've never come across one yet. Don't plan to.
Is there a way to see your videos?
It's probably Richard Stewart Taylor on YouTube. That I use my middle name there. I used to use just my middle and last name when I was doing a lot of court testimony. I didn't want to get on the stand qualifying as an expert witness and have an opposing attorney say, "Well, Mr. Taylor, I understand in your free time you're a Bigfoot researcher." Well, about half of the jury would roll their eyes, and everything I said from then on were,
unfortunately,
the credibility, not doing anything wrong, just telling the truth. So for many years, I used Stewart Taylor on a lot of my public, but I'm semi-retired now. I still do the work, but I don't really care anymore. I'm kind of an independent contractor in what I do. At that time, I was with a major underwriter, and you know how those strings, are tied. They don't want.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality in this subject. If you're going to have anything to do with it, and in any official capacity, a lot of people just keep themselves behind the scenes and hidden. They just watch, or they give a different name, just like you did.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with people not believe not. Yeah, I don't have a problem with people not believing. Where I do have a big problem is people attacking my integrity, you know,
Sure.
and being disrespectful, rude, and abusive. I've had people say things over the web that I'm an older man, but I've been around, you know, a few times, and I can't stand some of the attitude people have. I believe in common courtesy and respect. There's no room for the other, but
Sure.
you get people that'll attack your integrity and want to, you know, no.
Well, I think there's no escaping it. No matter what subject you're in, you're going to have those that either don't know how to approach you or just, like you said, question your integrity. Happens here every day. I call it projecting, you know, but that's my own third grade analysis. Well, we're up with our hour here, Rick. What I want to do is I want to book you back, and I want you to send me some your pictures, your video, and because there's a lot more detailed stuff I want to get into you with. You know, when we talked on the phone the other day, we only do an hour here, but we got more.
I apologize for being real wordy. I like detail though.
No, that's okay. That's okay, because now you get to come back. We get a whole nother show with you later. So
Good deal.
So thank you so much, Rick, for coming on here. Hey guys, don't forget, midnight tonight is the cutoff. If you're gonna get in for the prizes tonight, we'll be drawing for that Friday. Make sure you go and subscribe to Hidden Existence. Daniela has been doing some live. What are you doing? Live walks over there? What is that? They're pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, different things. Going for walks. Did one the other night. Just the thunder and lightning. You know, just chatting away. I've got a new show coming up, but that'll be revealed maybe at the end of the week. Something different.
Well, if you go and subscribe there and make sure you hit the notification bell, you'll know exactly what's coming up on Hidden Existence.
You'll find out. There's a new show coming.
All right. New Shudder's coming. I haven't put a Shudder out in 20 days. We had the accident with the puppy. By the way, took him to the vet this morning. He looked, everything is in line still. He lost 2 of his puppy teeth and broke the tip off of one of his canines, but all that stuff's going to come back, they said. So about 4 months, his permanent teeth will be back. Everything is good and straight. He's running around eating. So I'm going to go back to making Shudder videos. And we have a late show tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Central. Miss Marie Mason's going to be with me. And Brad also is going to be here co-hosting with that. And that's it. I think that's all. Thanks again, Rick, for being here. I'm gonna, as soon as we're over, don't go anywhere. I want to get you. I want you to get you booked back on here.
All right. Thank you, Kerry.
All right. Y'all have a good night.